Welcome back to the Nullified Take channel here on YouTube, where I've got the TNT takes for you on Australian Survivor Heroes vs Villains episode 20. That's right, I'm back. And what an episode, what a season. It continues to deliver even this late in the game, only with 6 players left. Let's get straight into it. Takeaway number 1 is the isolation twist. Now, I'm not a big fan of non-elimination episodes, and I think everybody that has listened to this channel for quite a while knows that about me. But I will say, I kind of like the Survivor isolation twist by the end of it, because there were a couple of interesting elements that was brought into the game. Now, George has been dominating the season for the majority of it, and he has been running away with all of his pawns intact, going out there and doing his bidding. You know, he's the king, and they are simply the servants that help him get to the end with their votes at this stage in the game. But with the Survivor isolation twist, it did throw a spanner in the works, and George had to work extra hard, and I thought it made for some compelling and interesting television where we know George is running away with this season, so no one else is actually standing up against him and giving him resistance. So production thought, let's throw something in there to make it harder for him to win the season. It's probably not fair on the player, and if I was out there, I would not like the non-elimination, and I would not like Survivor isolation. But this episode was interesting because it did force 2 people in this game who have never really seen eye to eye, who have never really worked together, to be stuck together for 24 hours. And because Jerry felt blindsided, it opened other opportunities for them to create a counter alliance that potentially could go up against the powers that be. The other part of the non-elimination twist that I don't like is that people get like an extra life in the game. They don't have their torch completely snuffed, and they get another opportunity to come back and win this game. But there are a few things that really put the person or the 2 people who were in isolation at disadvantage in this spot. For instance, both of them had to have the tribe bring them food if they wanted to. They had to get the tribe to bring them water, and they didn't get to compete in the immunity challenge. And individual immunity is something that can keep you safe in the game, especially if you are that person who had the 5 votes against you like Nina did in the previous episode. It really leveled the playing field. There was a clear disadvantage to being on Survivor Isolation. So I actually thought that this twist played out really well. It made for interesting dynamics where when people came to talk to them, they had to strategize openly because they couldn't walk away to the water well with Jerry. And we'll get into that a little bit further on as we continue down the top 5 takes. Takeaway number 2, Matt wins his 3rd immunity challenge of this season. He is now 2 away from equaling the record and 1 away from equaling Simon's record of 4 individual immunities for the season. But George kind of makes him aware, if you win outright from here on until the end, you would be the new record holder of 6 individual immunity wins within a season. I believe Haley's got 5 individual immunity wins from her season, so she is an equal record holder of that at the moment. But, you know, this was an interesting individual immunity challenge where they had this kind of circle platform table that they had to stack dominoes on, and they had to twist it, and it would coil up against the top and then have a lot of tension on it as they were placing these blocks. So a lot of different things were tested here. Your patience, your ability to work slowly and methodically, and making sure that you get the spacing right to knock over the dominoes to win it. I like this. I haven't seen this variation within Survivor before, and I thought when they went into this immunity challenge, it would be something that would really be up the cat's alley. That's Simon, for those that still aren't aware that that is his nickname now in the game. He looked like he was going to do extremely well, and it was so close between both Matt and Simon going into the end there. With seconds between them, Matt wins this, being a bit more risky and placing those blocks a lot faster. But if you ask me, who would you bet on to win? 8 out of 10 times, I would say probably Simon in this spot. So well done on Matt for at least, he's strategically not adding much to the game, but he is winning some individual immunities out there. Takeaway number 3, I thought this was an interesting scene with everybody going back to the camp afterwards. You see George coming up with the plan to again split the votes 2, 2, and 2. They have to have 2 votes go Simon's way, 2 votes go Nina's way, and then it doesn't matter when Nina and Simon votes at the end because they have the numbers. And George says to Liz, make sure I don't freak out at tribal council again and change the vote, and keep me calm in this moment. To do this vote, though, they had to go back and have a conversation with Jerry to get him in on it. And Jerry is not as receptive in the beginning of this episode. A lot of this episode was really around, will Jerry flip or not? And George is very smart in how he approaches the situation. He gets Matt to lead a lot of the conversation while Jerry is not too happy with him, and he sort of sits back in certain portions of this strategy talk. And Nina picks up on that immediately. She clearly has great reads in the game, and she continues to be in Jerry's ear, telling him, like, hey, if he was good with you, if he felt comfortable with you, wouldn't he lead the conversation? Why is he letting Matt be the person who approaches you? Because Matt is that closest person to Jerry in the game. But another really interesting conversation that happened here, and what I wanted to touch on, was the conversation between George and Simon. They've had this frenemy, a rivalry that has been happening the whole season. And he tells him, listen, the vote's going to be split again. And he's pretty open about it. He's that confident that he's got the numbers and he's going to go with his alliance, that he tells Simon, if you're smart, you need to put your vote where you did last time. That will keep you safe in the game. So he does let Simon in on how to get out of it here in this spot, which for Simon, I feel like his game has been so exciting. I wasn't ready for the roller coaster to end. You know, I had times where I was against him in the beginning when he was going after George. Then I had times where I started liking him and I was like, oh man, he's the lovable underdog. You know, he's our lovable underdog in the game. And I really felt sorry for him this episode to see him go in the way that he did. But we'll get into that a little bit later on. Takeaway number 4, the big story here was, will Jerry flip or not? You know, he had conversations with Nina, and Nina let him in on the Day Spa alliance that he wasn't aware of. He felt like George wanted him out of the game as a threat. In his mind, he is a threat to George at the end game. So it was interesting to see how, you know, we heard from the likes of a Haley in her exit interviews that these people out there all think that their game is comparable to George's game at this point, and George is absolutely snowing them. You know, he should be in sales. Well, I guess politicians are salespeople in a certain degree, but it's interesting to see how convinced he is that he's a threat to George and that George would want to take him out in the game, when we as the viewers have not seen what any of George's pawns in the game have done up until this point. You know, I'd love to talk to them after the season. I'd love to hear Jerry's perspective and Matt's perspective and Liz's perspective, but at this stage it's been the George show, and that is at least what the production team has made sure to let us know. They've clearly highlighted that George is the player, the mastermind and the brains behind this operation. So Jerry had an opportunity here to take out the king and become a bona fide threat to the end game by making a big move, but he withheld in this episode from jumping ship, even though Nina was in his ear quite a bit. He had Simon willing to make a move. Simon's been ready for 26 days and it's not been going his way. So Jerry ends up going to tribal council and confessing his admiration for George, and continues to help build George's amazing resume to the jury. You know, if I was George, I'd be so thankful for Jerry going out there telling me that I'm the mentor, I'm the person that he's learning from, and how great I am at the game, because, you know, Jerry is so much, you know, I hope he gets a cut of the check at the end of this game, because he's doing amazing work for George's resume going into the end game here. At this point, I'm all in on the George win, by the way, as well. I just want George to go and dominate the season, because I feel like anybody outside of George winning this season at the moment, it would fall flat for me, because I just can't see any other player being a winner candidate at this stage or playing a really great winner's game. Takeaway number 5, tribal council happens. You know, we've got this opportunity to see if Jerry's going to flip. George is very defensive. He snows Jerry again here in this moment, saying that he changed his vote last minute because he thought Jerry was going to go home and he wanted to save Jerry. But we all know that George only cared about his own behind. That is why he changed that vote, because he thought that Simon and Matt and Nina were going to come for him with 3 votes. And that is what left Jerry exposed. But Jerry does believe it, you know. And the big part here, and I think the part that really sunk Simon's game, is JLP asking Simon, can you talk about the pawn conversation at Tribal Council? And Simon says, yes, please, let me talk about it in front of the jury. And he continues to see the game in the sense of saying that, listen, there's 3 pawns in the game. Those are the people that have been working very closely with George from the beginning of the game, and that is Matt and Jerry and also Liz. Clearly that is not going to make them very happy. Matt even earlier in the game said, you know, he can't believe that he's maybe even going to work with Simon, who's called him a pawn in the game, and now he's got an opportunity to maybe not be a pawn by taking out George, but he doesn't go ahead and do it, which for us as viewers, love George, he's been great, but you kind of want to see some resistance. You kind of want to see some other players out there also playing the game. There's some rumors out there that Australian Survivor has opened the casting to fans now of the show for the first time in a very long time. I think maybe season 2 was the last time where they actually legitimately casted fans of the show on the show, because since then they've been bringing back a lot of celebrities or famous people over there in Australia, which is obviously great for the ratings, but not so great when it comes to having people out there that individually can think for themselves and come up with great strategy and create great moments on TV, because there is actually not one or two people running the show like we've seen this season. Matt, being a fan, you would think being called a pawn would really get to him. He wants to get that money. Like Simon says, it's $500,000 is life-changing money for any of us here. We should not just be freely giving it to George. We should be making a move. But it doesn't kind of work out. I feel like it blows up a little bit in Simon's face, bringing this conversation up again. And people are more offended by it because in their minds, in that moment, I feel like they've got a bit of Stockholm syndrome, if that's what you call it, and they all have really, really gotten close to George, and it does speak to George's incredible social game. There's times I've been saying he doesn't have the greatest social game, but clearly, if he gets to the end now, how can anybody not vote for George? It would be the most bitter jury in the history of the show, even when you've got competitors of George saying how great he is and that he is this mentor in the game. I also felt like it was a bit of an unfair comparison made by Jerry towards Simon when he brought up the whole bodybuilding, mentoring, and coaching thing. When you've got a mentor and a coach in bodybuilding or in sport, they're not going up against you. They're not competing against you in bodybuilding. They're not competing for the same prize that you're competing for. So at one point, Survivor is an individual game. It's not about having this mentor in the game that you want to help get to the end and take the money from you. So I felt like it fell flat a little bit for me in this game. But nonetheless, that's my top 5 takes here for this episode. I can't wait to see how this whole season is going to play out. Give George his flowers at this stage. I mean, the guy is insane at this game, and I think that he's running to the end. He's going to take this money, and the only way to end this season is by George getting the money, is by George winning the crown. If he doesn't get it, anything less than that at this point to me would be a massive disappointment, because I just can't see. Maybe Nina, she's now the outsider, but man, it's going to be tough for her to get to the end now. If I had to talk about who do I most want to see win this show right now, it's George and Nina. Those are my two at this stage, because at least they're playing their own game out there. But that's it for now. Grab your torches, head back to camp, and I'll catch you guys next time. Bye.